Before we start, I think it's appropriate if we could all just have 1 minute's thought, quiet, for the people who have died on the streets of Brighton and Hove and elsewhere over the last year and before then. So if I could ask everybody to have a minute's silence in their memory and to give thought to their passing. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. There are a few messages. I'm not going to read them all in detail, but it's of importance, I think, that Peter Kyle, Caroline, I don't need to mention a second name, Caroline Lucas and Lloyd, the MP for Kemp Town, the 3 MPs for our city, have each sent their messages of support, which we'll publish after, expressing support both for this launch and for a Bill of Rights, a homeless Bill of Rights for the city. And I'm exceptionally pleased that each of the 3 MPs have sent their support. I'm not going to read the details, but they'll be published on the website and in the report of the launch. Secondly, we've had a message of support from Tim Worthley, who some of you will know by name and reputation, if not personally. And for those of you that don't know, he's essentially the doctor that looks after and helps and advises and assists people on the streets and people who are homeless in Brighton and Hove. And interestingly, we were exchanging, we had a conversation via email at 1 o'clock this morning, because he also expressed his support for the use of a certain property that you may have seen on the Coalition's Facebook page this morning, Ocean House, to ensure that we have emergency sweat facilities open and available now, because we're now in a worse situation than we were 12 months ago in terms of provision of facilities for people because of the weather conditions and so on. It's absolutely disgraceful. And there's a building there that has all the facilities, happens to be empty, by the way, in case the council don't decide to buy it, and we want them to. But it is empty and got all its facilities running at the present time. And it is somewhere that is easily accessible for people who are on the streets. So there's a message from Tim Worthley. In addition, we invited councillors, and we've had messages from a number. I'm not going to, again, I'm not going through all the messages, but I would emphasise that either in presence or in messages sent, the involvement is across all parties in the local authority, which I am so pleased about, because what we're doing does not belong to one party. Morally and socially and ethically, it clearly belongs to some and should belong to all. But it is something that we need to do with the support not only of the Labour Party, and Nancy Platts has sent her apologies and her support, the Greens, where the group have already taken a decision to support the Bill of Rights, but also importantly the Conservatives. And I'm pleased that one of the Conservative councillors is here today. Right, I wouldn't say anything else. Well, I might say a few words later on during the afternoon if I'm forced to. But I would prefer to keep quiet and say very little. I doubt if I'll be able to control myself totally during the next hour. But I want to introduce you to Maria Jose Aldanas, I think.
That's right. Perfect.
Thank goodness for that. On behalf of FEANTSA, but she'll explain more. And she's coming from, were you in Brussels this morning? Yeah, just come in from Brussels, especially for the launch of the campaign for the Homeless Bill of Rights. So, Maria.
Let's hope that, no, I'll try not to use the micro. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, my name is Maria Jose Aldanas. I'm Spanish, so my main language is not English. So let's hope that I'll be able to speak all the way through without stop. I'm really glad to be here in Brighton, which is the first UK city that has shown any kind of interest in joining this movement that we started from Europe. This Homeless Bill of Rights is an initiative that we initiated in FEANTSA. FEANTSA is the European Federation of National Associations Working with the Homeless. We are based in Brussels, and a lot of our work has to do with the rights-based approach. For a few years now, we've been working with a rights-based approach to homelessness within a network that it's called Housing Rights Watch Network. And this is one of the ideas that we had in mind for a couple of years before we actually put it into practice. In the past, we've done a lot of work against the criminalization of homelessness. So, for instance, we did in 2012 a campaign raising awareness against the criminalization of homelessness in the whole Europe. We call this campaign "Poverty is not a crime." And we've done many other things after that, like doing reports on 17 different European countries on what was happening in terms of criminalization of homelessness, and we had in mind that we needed to do something different, that denouncing was like the right approach, obviously, because it's simply unacceptable that we continue penalizing and criminalizing the activities of homeless people when they don't have anywhere else to go. But we wanted to take a different approach. So it was a colleague of mine that Jamie knows. His name is Matt Lee. He's a French guy. He went to the US to visit the National Law Center for Homelessness and Poverty. And they do run a huge campaign in different countries, in different states in the US, to promote the Homeless Bill of Rights. And this was the idea. So what we did was to import the idea of the Homeless Bill of Rights into Europe, translate it into a more European wording. But you know, like when you're working from the European perspective, you need to have something that can be adapted to most realities, because Europe is quite diverse. And so we had an English version and a French version, but with the idea that it was it would include like the main basic fundamental rights of homeless people, but that people or actors that were interested to adapt it in the local context could introduce more rights or adapt it to the context, like I don't know, depending on what the main issues were at local level, etc. And so the idea was for European cities to sign, to endorse the Homeless Bill of Rights, of course, but for us the main objective was also to raise the debate, to have all actors to come together and raise the debate and and talk about the fundamental rights of homeless people. Starting with I think that in the following interventions they will speak about every single right that is included in this homeless bill of rights, but the starting point is the right to housing. Like, we won't be speaking about anything else if the right to housing was to be fulfilled. That means that if people were housed, people wouldn't be in the streets. So, I mean, this is not a bill to say there's a right to be homeless. No. On the opposite, there's a right to be housed, a right to be in shelter and so on, and this is the starter. So anything else and all the different fundamental rights that are included in the homeless bill of rights is based on this. Why are we doing this? So in Europe we have we get to know many situations in Europe. So, like, one of the probably the most violent or the more aggressive situation is what's happening now in Hungary. You know that the Hungarian constitution includes now the prohibition, they forbid to live in the street, and a few recent laws are developing this provision of the fundamental constitution. So this is like probably the most craziest situation in Europe, but we see all the time the growing use of public space protection orders, like you hear in the UK. We see municipal ordinances punishing begging or threatening to punish or to ban begging in many Scandinavian countries, for example. So we wanted cities to be aware that their rights, their rights frequently violated, and that we wanted them to uphold the rights of homeless people. So that's why we had this idea for the homeless bill of rights. And as you will see, it is a compilation of basic rights drawn from European and international human rights law. It is a document that cities can translate and adapt to their own context. 6 European cities have endorsed it. One of them is Barcelona, which you probably know. And cities are strongly encouraged to build some kind of participatory strategy at local level, including homeless people themselves, obviously, before the bill is signed. I see that in Brighton and Hove, this is what you're doing. I think it's a very interesting approach to have a non-party approach to it, and I hope that Brighton will be the first UK city to endorse the homeless bill of rights, and that if you don't succeed to do that, so at least you will raise you will raise the public debate on the issue, and that you will manage to improve the conditions of the situation of homeless people. That's all I had to say.
I'm now going to ask Jamie Burton from Just Fair to say a few words.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me to talk to you today, but most of all, thanks very much for the initiative, which is a truly fantastic one, and one I hope not only adopted here in Brighton and Hove, but sets an example for other British cities too, and indeed hopefully even more of the 6 European cities will also do something similar, because reflecting on why we were here and why this event was happening, I was thinking, you know, what are the narratives that have brought us here today in Brighton and Hove, and indeed what are the narratives which are causing similar events to take place elsewhere in Europe? And it's because we're experiencing a crisis, are we not? We're being told we are, anyway. We're being told it's a crisis. There's certainly a rising number of people who are homeless. Certainly there's an increase in the number of people who are finding themselves rough sleeping. And we know there's a housing crisis. We're constantly told there's a housing crisis out there. Except I don't really buy into that terminology or that way of framing the problem. Because to me, the use of the language crisis suggests that something is happening to us. It's almost as if it's an external force, an act of God, a force of nature that has somehow befallen us, and now we have this crisis to deal with. When it's nothing of the kind. It's an entirely man-made problem. We're the reasons why there is homelessness in Brighton and Hove. We're the reasons why there is homelessness elsewhere. In wealthy, developed countries like ours, it's absolutely outrageous that there's homelessness at all. And to try and blame that on something else, or say it's a consequence of a crisis that we've got to come to terms with, is just completely wrong. We've created this problem for ourselves, and therefore it's up to us to create the solution. And I think that's fundamentally where we have to start from when it comes to social issues like homelessness. And of course, nobody in this room needs reminding that the issue of homelessness is not an isolated problem. It doesn't happen in a way which doesn't impact on all other aspects of people's well-being and their right to live a dignified and flourishing life. Because of course, we know this, the evidence is very clear that people who are homeless or don't have access to suitable housing suffer a great number of other deprivations, both to their health, to their educational capability, to their employment prospects, to their familial ties, to their mental health. The list goes on and on. And that's because, of course, as again, nobody needs reminding of this, housing is an integral part of who we are and our ability to live meaningful lives. So the consequence of all of this is we have a man-made crisis which is having a very significant impact on the very fundamental thing that we are, which is living people trying to live meaningful lives. And so if it is a man-made crisis, it's therefore capable of man-made solutions, by definition. So then the question is, well, why is it getting worse, and why are we in this situation now? Why aren't the politicians doing what we'd expect of them, which is using man-made solutions to fix man-made problems? And they often tell us they're going to do it. Indeed, only 10 days ago in parliamentary questions, PMQs, Theresa May said that the government was now committed to ending rough sleeping in the United Kingdom. The following week, she said the government is now committed to ending austerity. Yeah, exactly, it's laughable. Because these problems are perfectly capable of being solved. It just seems it's much easier to say you're going to do it than actually do it. And why is that? Well, the second sort of myth that we're told about homelessness, which I think is equally damaging in the same way as the crisis language is that it's very complicated. It's very, very difficult problem to solve. Lots of different reasons why people are homeless. Indeed, there are lots of different reasons why people are homeless. The problem is we know what they are. For the most part, we actually have a pretty good grip on understanding the reasons why homelessness is getting worse. We know, for example, that the biggest cause of homelessness is evictions from the private rented sector. And we know that at the moment, the private rented sector, in historical terms, is as deregulated as it's ever been. That the landlord's right to evict tenants is as free as it's ever been. That retaliatory evictions, i.e. where landlords evict people because they complain the boiler doesn't work or there's damp in the bedrooms, are at the highest they've ever been. That evictions because landlords want to charge more rent are at the highest they've ever been. So we know that one of the biggest causes are problems in the private rented sector, and yet we're doing very little about it. We also know that austerity and the cuts to social security benefits have a direct impact on homelessness rates. We also know that cuts to the NHS and social care have a direct impact on homelessness rates. We also know that the absence of job creation schemes in parts of the country has had a very direct contribution to homelessness because people are leaving towns in search of work. So a lot of the reasons why homelessness is in the state that it's in are well known to us. Now that doesn't necessarily mean, and I accept this, and one would have to accept this, that they can be solved overnight. But it's not really accurate to say that the problem is too complicated to be solved. It's simply a problem which requires a level of commitment and finance and professionalism, fundamentally, that at the moment the governments that we elect simply aren't willing to provide. So that's why I think this initiative is such a great one, because it's now trying to transform the framing and the debate around homelessness. By using human rights to do that, you're depoliticising it, you're saying it's about fundamental rights, it's about the essential things that people require to live meaningful lives. And by having a Bill of Rights directed towards the problem and articulating the problem in that way is a major first step, in my view, and I'm sure everybody would agree, to solving that problem. And it's really good to see that this Bill of Rights is not, of course, restricted to simply the right to housing, because, as I said a little while earlier, of course, the issue of homelessness and housing is directly, it's intrinsic, really, to all sorts of other issues. And it's really to the credit of the drafters of this, both the European model and the revised version that we have here, that is understood, and the rights include things like the right to property, the right to access to services, the right to have their data protected. Because, of course, one of the big consequences of homelessness is not just the deprivations, but it's also the stigma, the way in which people treat homeless people, which is a key aspect, obviously, of the problem that must also be solved. And I think, again, using a human rights-based approach is very important even in that regard, because it reminds everybody that we're all born equal. We all have an equal right to not only the freedoms that we normally associate with human rights, like the right to vote, the right not to be subjected to torture, but we also have an equal right to the material things that we all need in order to live meaningful lives. Just Fair, just if I can say one thing about Just Fair, is committed not just to tackling homelessness as a human rights issue, but indeed looking at all social issues through the prism of human rights. Just Fair was set up to try and advocate for the incorporation of economic and social rights alongside political rights. And they are the right to education, the right to high sustainable standards of health, the right to work and just conditions of work, and the right to an adequate home and an adequate standard of living. These are all issues, in fact, which we should be talking about from a rights perspective, and not always a political perspective. Because unfortunately, as we know, despite the great words of our Prime Minister, there's not an awful lot of reason to believe that she'll come good on that promise. And the value of having rights is that if they don't come good, that's the politicians, and they don't live up to their promises, we can enforce them by way of court proceedings and court advocacy, etc. So this is a great development, one that Just Fair is absolutely delighted is happening and is really, really happy to be able to endorse. And it's brilliant to see such a strong showing today of people who are here to make sure it becomes a reality, not just hopefully in Brighton and Hove, but across the country. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jamie. Next words are from David Thomas, who's the legal officer of the Brighton Hove Housing Coalition, and also probably the driving force behind the Bill of Rights for Brighton and Hove. So, David. No.
Right, so thank you very much for that introduction, and thank you so much to Maria and to Jamie for coming here. To say where this document came from, we at the Coalition have been fighting for years on many fronts to make public authorities treat homeless people with more consideration and respect. And things like the confiscation and throwing away of tents and belongings, and the provision of emergency shelter. And a while ago it occurred to us that it might help if we drew up some sort of charter of the rights of homeless people, which, if we could persuade the Council to accept, would provide us with a reference point and with leverage across a whole range of arguments. So we looked around and we discovered that we were far from the first to think of such a thing. It's been a movement, as Maria said, in the States. In this country, Manchester has a homeless charter of rights, which some other cities have copied. We looked at that, but we thought it was too fluffy and patronising. But looking around, we found FEANTSA's document, which is a much more hard-hitting document, and it is from the point of view of the homeless throughout. It had real bite to it, we thought. So this project was made to make us the first British city to adopt the Homeless Bill of Rights. If Barcelona can do it, we can do it. And when we've done it, you know, London next. So what's it about? Human rights are rights we all have. They apply to everybody without regard to race or nationality or immigration or housing status. But to say that, it's kind of a hollow statement. If you're on the streets, it's a terrible place to be, and everywhere you're met with rejection, contempt, and barriers to getting you the means to exist and to living a decent life. So this document, that yellow one, this document is an attempt to make human rights a little less hollow. If it's adopted by the Council, we intend that it shouldn't just be a matter of some grand self-congratulatory ceremony. This Homeless Bill of Rights must feed into every measure, every policy, practice and procedure the Council has that affects homeless people. And it's not intended simply as a declaration. If you have, for example, as the Council has a protocol for dealing with the tents of people who are surviving it as homeless, then the first thing they should be asking is whether or not that protocol is sensitive to the rights and needs as homeless people as set out in this document. It's not just a document for the Council, though it's the Council we're focusing on first. The Council itself works with many other organisations in ways that affect homeless people. So public authorities like the police, the NHS, the coroner, voluntary sector organisations such as the Brighton Housing Trust, private companies such as City Clean. So we want the Council to ensure as far as it can that all those organisations also respect the rights we set out, and we'll be asking those organisations also to sign up to the Bill of Rights. Turning to the document itself, it is a European document that we have with FEANTSA's agreement revised the translation and added a couple of rights which are within the spirit of the original. It starts, as it must, with the human right to housing. This right is set out in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, also in more detail in the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, important international treaties to which this country is signed up. So this is the right that makes all the other rights in this document unnecessary. And Jim Deans is going to talk more about it. So the remaining rights of the document are detailed practical rights that address the situation of people who this country has failed, people who have been denied the first right, which is theirs. But like all human rights, these rights are fundamentally about the right of everyone to be treated equally and to be able to live with dignity. I'll just mention a few. Article 5 is the right to a postal address. You need a postal address if you want to claim benefits, if you want to get employment. Article 6, the right to sanitary facilities, is basic to human dignity. Article 9, the right to data protection, acknowledges that public authorities sometimes fail to treat the data of homeless persons with respect. Speakers who follow me will be speaking about other of the individual rights. Article 4 is the right. Article 4 is the right to data protection. No, it's not. I beg your pardon. Article 4 is the right to equal treatment. This is fundamental, and it has special meanings in this context. It doesn't mean some theoretical equality. It means our city must not give way to the desire to forget the humanitarian disaster on the streets, to tidy it away, to sweep it out of sight by criminalising the people affected and the things they have to do to survive. So Article 3 says homeless people must have the same right to use public space as the rest of us, must not be swept out of the way. Article 11 acknowledges that for homeless people to survive, they must sometimes ask us for help, for money. Sometimes they must take discarded food where they can find it in bins. It commits the council, and we hope the police, to allowing this without criminalising the people who do it. If our retail outlets and our city pride want tiding homeless people out of the way, there is only one acceptable way of doing it, and that's by ensuring that everybody has shelter, everybody has housing. No one ever has to sleep out. That's up to me. The speakers that follow are the people, are the real heroes. They're the people who work every day of the week to help make homeless people's lives better.
Thank you, David. Right, our next speaker is Maria Garrett-Gotch, who is, I still say Maria, she says no, who is the chair of the Homelessness Action Group of the Coalition and runs a project called OpSafe, which I'm sure she'll mention, and is going to make specific mention of one of the most discriminated groups of people in our society, which are the travellers and the Roma and Gypsies.
I was actually asked to sort of do something at one specific point, but I've been a bit of a rebel and I've just done all of it because there's so much within the travelling community that's not addressed, so I've been a bit of a rebel. So, often when we think about homelessness, we forget the hidden homeless, those seeking shelter in tents, boats and trucks, widely known as the travelling community, made up of travellers, gypsies and roamers. In the eyes of the law, this marginalised ethnic group is still classed as homeless, as they have no fixed address. The right to survival practices such as shelter, healthcare, hospitals, nutrition and child development and education are often implemented by the local authorities. Evidence suggests that the lack of respect and cultural awareness and institutional racism in emergency services, GPs and hospitals, schools and the education system, and low expectations by agencies and services are the contributing factors. These ethnic groups find it very hard to access healthcare due to being no fixed abode, or it's disrupted or delayed due to evictions, or they end up presenting at walking clinics and A&E where no follow-up care is in provision. Health will vary from accommodation with accommodation status. Settled travellers may experience depression from loss of their traditional lifestyle, whilst highly mobile travellers may suffer high levels of anxiety by displacement or being separated from their families. Rates are high in psychological health. Traveller men present as the lowest group at engaging with services with high levels of ill health. They present as stoical. Alcohol is more commonly used as a coping strategy, and elders fear that the growing use of drugs within their community by the younger generation. Maternal care is poor in traveller women. Infant deaths and birth problems are more frequent, as are childhood diseases and illness. Irish traveller women often have complex health issues due to having such large families with multiple births. Midwife appointments and antenatal services are not consistent and non-existent due to lack of provisions for travellers by local authorities and again frequent evictions. They are often seen as resilient to services, as are the homeless. Children suffer with their development, and there are lower rates of immunisation of this ethnic group. Economic hardship and deprivation in the wider sense is the determinant factor. Hostile environments, unsuitable encampments on unsuitable developments, such as wastelands or under motorway bridges. Traveller children suffer greatly at being distanced from amenities. They often lack safe paying facilities for their children. Lack of education and poor literacy often makes travellers feel like a fish out of water. Poor communication and patience, unfortunately, usually resulting in people discharging themselves from services, from healthcare to hospitals to palliative care, where many choose to die at home. There is a gap in the provision for families visiting, not understanding cultural practices. Also, there is a scientific proof that links the sanitation of legal or illegal campings that have a long-lasting effect on health and can cause conditions and implications in the future. Incontinence and bowel and bladder problems are high in this ethnic group. Michelle Gavin from FFT, where I work, actually did a paper on it. I'm able to read that. Being a close-knit community, death and family separation affects the wider community and can be devastating. Funeral arrangements and cultural practice are not still widely understood amongst the different ethnic groups. Traveller children are less likely to access school or obtain grades. Over half of them experience bullying or physical violence. Their lack of literacy can lead to bad nutrition by lack of knowledge of healthy eating. This in turn has a negative effect on the body's health, teeth and development. GCR pupils are the lowest achieving group at every stage of education. Although some Gypsy Roman traveller pupils achieve very well, GRT students are 5 times more likely to be excluded from school. They're 3 times more likely to identify with special needs, and they have the lowest attainment of all groups of children. The GRT community has a staggering 60% or more that have no formal qualifications at all. GRT children are 3 times more likely to be taken into foster care. Between 2009 and 2013, the increase in Roma and Gypsy children into care was 733%, and an increase in traveller children removed by 200%. We need more support and working relationships between the GRT services and the wider community, keeping children in school by developing an understanding of their values and cultures, to address bullying and discrimination, gaining support from parents, to provide appropriate support in order to raise attainment. I worry that in our city sometimes there's more compassion than focus, and that the GRT community are often not heard or represented due to lack of the system. Our Homeless Bill of Rights supports includes everyone in the travelling community, so please will you support our campaign to get BHCC to adopt the Bill of Rights. Lobby support. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Maria. I'd now like to introduce Jim. Again, don't really need his second name, but it's Jim Dean. Sussex Homeless Support. Many of you will know him already, and may have been at the clock tower earlier on today. So, Jim.
Hi, yeah, Steve says I run a project in the city called Hove, Sussex Homeless Support, and we're kind of like right at the front end. We have a really large group of volunteers, work 7 days a week, 18 hours a day, sometimes dealing with the crisis. We're right on the front end, so we do a lot of stuff like, as well as serve up food every week, cook for other organisations for food. We're probably best known for our bus, which has become a second bus. Because obviously it's not getting any better. I think the guys today, I'm saying served up probably over 120 people that served proper food today, proper food. They left with bellies full. One of the things people don't know about what we do is we do home drops. So every Friday we're doing over 20 homes. These are people that have been on the street, or they're in the risk of running and they're on the street. So we support them by giving them between 40 and 50 pounds worth of food every Friday delivered to their door. And it's a good check to see how they are, and sometimes you see if they're putting weight on or not. Something that's been, government that took away, which is, like home helps and all this stuff. So that's really encouraging, because we're actually seeing guys that are on the street, coming off the street, and as soon as they get accommodation, they just grow, and then they want to come and volunteer. We've got guys that are 25 years on the street. As soon as they get this sensible accommodation, they get a TV, they get a frying pan, they get a microwave. You can see it in their change. They just want to, and then they come and volunteer. They actually come and join us and volunteer. Like today, some of the volunteers are homeless. Some of the guys are living in tents, but they're joining in because they think it's a solution. To come to the bill, I've been tasked with the first one, which is the right to a house. It just goes with that saying, the right to a house. I'm not being funny, but at the end of the war, men come back from fighting abroad, and we built prefabricated houses, we built dams, we built this, and we built them. And they said, it's only going to last 10 years. Some of them are still standing. We built, the community built these prefabricated houses. And we built the schools, and we built everything, because we were builders. We're not builders anymore. We're just professional complainers. People that just go from one excuse to the next excuse. And we actually believe that it's really complex, it's really difficult, and it's not that difficult. We just have to build prefabricated houses Meanwhile, let's encourage government to build another Milton Keynes or another Cumbernauld. Wait, when was the last time we built a city? Nothing. We built Cumbernauld, we built Milton Keynes, because we identified we actually needed more houses. And then you could buy your house. You could buy a house in this country. You could buy a house for £9,000. You could buy a house in Brighton, £35,000 to £36,000, because it was plenty empty property. But what's happened is we've not built any houses, so therefore the property goes up and up and up and up until you can't afford it. And then they say you can't even build houses now within a budget. So we've created this crisis. But for some people it's not a crisis. For some people, business is booming. You better believe it. You look at the bank accounts of some of these big guys, 83 million in property, 18 million in the bank, but want 25 quid off you to go and give somebody a sleeping bag, or want money off you. The reality is, some people are rubbing their hands. Business is absolutely booming, and that's where we have to target. We have to take away this whole concept that it's complex. If we see a spot of land, we put 4 prefabricated houses on it, and we put 4 people from the hostels into it. You know, some of these hostels are charging £1,200 and £1,400 a month for a single room. That, I'm not being funny, you could do a spin and touch every wall. And we're paying it. Housing benefit are paying. I know a family that are paying £3,000 a month. £3,000 a month for 3 bedrooms, and they're crammed in there. You know, what can we build? You can build prefabricated houses for £1,000. So my belief is we are right to housing. No more for a shelter. Because if you've got a house, then that's it. But in the meantime, let's get stability. Let's give them a right to a shelter, which is the second one. A right to have a shelter. No, you're not coming in here tonight because I'm too busy or because it's too full. Your right is you must have a shelter. And if that one's full, you go somewhere else. If you misbehave, you're never on the street. You just move to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Until such time, these people catch up, their mind catches up, and we see it all the time. All these people just need is a chance. And we can't turn our back on them anymore, because that's exactly why we're suffering. The amount of homeless we're suffering in Brighton, because the council have turned their back on it. They've hoped it will go away, and the reality is, it won't go away. That's me.
Thank you, Jim. Housing first. Keep that in your heads. I'd now like to ask Nikki to say a few words. Nikki Brennan, who's a member of the Housing Coalition Executive, and active, very active in the areas of homelessness. Nikki.
Thank you. Looks like I've been left with one of them then, have I? A little bit short. Right, well, I mean, I haven't got a speech really, but what I will say is that I've been given the number, let's see, I told you, right to access services. And I think on the whole we need to know that, you know, that there's been cuts to the services, there's been cuts to the hospitals, there's been cuts to the police, and there's been cuts to social care. And we have to acknowledge that. But the fact is, it's more kind of the terminology and the way that we will ring an ambulance, for example, and they'll ask us, and we have to tell them it's a, you know, you don't have to tell them, but you know, you say street homeless, they won't be there for a couple of hours. They really are treated as second-class citizens on our streets. They are, you know, access to services, the mental health issues that we see on the street, social adult care, and all the different policies around social, the adults, the adult risk is not being applied to people who live on the street. So basically what we're seeing is almost like open mental health wards on our streets, and yet there is no protection around them. That is what we are visibly seeing. I would say, and what I would say is, you know, substance misuse is a mental health issue, and should be seen like that and should be addressed like that. There should be a safe place for them to be able to use their drugs, and if it will take the needles off the street. And then if they want to address their addiction or their problem, because it might not be an addiction, they will be able to get help and advice. That to me is just common sense. When I brought this subject up to the what was he, Jim? Was he the commissioner of the police, or what was he? He was the boss.
Yeah, Kate Bourne.
Yeah,
Kate Bourne, Chief Commissioner.
yeah. It was seen as, oh no, you can't be doing that because then everybody will want to come to Brighton to use drugs. Well, they come here every weekend, every way. Yeah, so it's things like that. It's, I mean, you know, the council they have got a problem, and we go to a group and we take the needs of the homeless to the council, and we tell them of the street. And I've got one personal story, and I was also meant to do property. A very, very positive, smiley face friend of mine who lives on the streets came to me one day, and I said, "How are you today?" And he said, "I'm not very happy. I packed all my stuff, my home, because a tent is a home, okay? All my personal belongings, I packed them away, I put them all tidy, and they get thrown out of a church and taken away." And I was so sad. I was so sad. And when I took this to the councillors, we were then informed that they had to pay £25 to get the stuff that had been stolen from them back again. Because actually, even though we do need to get policy around City Clean, they are stealing people's personal properties. But it's not seen like that because it's a homeless person. It's a rough sleeper. It's just a mess on our streets. We can't be having all these messy tents. You know, they're messy tents of people's homes. It's their only... I mean, how have we got to this? That is it. And if you don't want to see them tents on your street, put them in a shelter. You know, don't. And then charge them £25. This is the type of thing that we need to change, that they feel it's all right to treat a human being like that just because he has no status, no home. And on that subject, I've been wanting to get one thing, is the amount of attacks and abuse that we have on our streets, especially in Brighton, because we get lots of people coming in, celebrating, they're fine before they go in the clubs, they're sitting with the homeless people, they're getting their photos taken and it's all fun, and they give them a tenner, they come out, they've had too much cocaine, and then they want to start fighting. And it's then said by the police, oh, they don't report it, or the rough sleeper will go, what is the point? What is the point? Now, if we get it categorised as a hate crime, it will have to be seen as more serious. It will have to be dealt with. It have to be registered, because they don't even register rough sleepers' deaths. Can you imagine? That is how, you know, it's like on the forums they're allowed to say, oh, hang them, they're vermin. You know, this is allowed because they don't have a house. That's the only reason. And because they look a bit rough, or they drink a lot, then people on the street. So fucking.
Right.
Reality for you.
I just want to emphasise a couple of things, and I'm going to ask David to make a few comments on the points of the Bill of Rights that have been covered. The first is that our priority is to ensure that this is adopted by our City Council. That is what we want and what is needed, so we can hold that council to account against a decent criteria of services provided for people of this city. That is the priority, and as part of that we will soon be launching a petition for people to support this Bill of Rights. But that hopefully, as has already been said by Maria, is that this will also act as an example of good practice for other cities to take up throughout the UK. And the petition, which we launch very soon, will be available to sign on a national as well as on a local basis. We already planned, and better put in your diary now, for the 11th of April next year, a special housing hustings. And we want at least 500 of you to turn up. And all the parties have agreed to attend. It will be the first available day by which all the candidates for the elections in May will be known. It's been covered by the BBC, and who booked a place straight away. And we hope to be able to link up with other cities in the UK, and probably with Helsinki in relation to Housing First, which I mentioned earlier on, which is central to the ideas of the Homeless Bill of Rights. Unfortunately, Housing First is supported in name in Brighton, but not yet in practice. So I just remind you of that our strategy is not just to have a nice launch today and to get support for the Bill of Rights, it's to work through, and we want to see the first council meeting, new council meeting, after the elections at the beginning of May next year, to adopt this Bill of Rights as policy for the city. And in between, let's have the police sign it, let's have the ambulance service sign it, the NHS, the Trades Council, the other organisations, the Community and Safety Forum that we attended from the LGBT community last week, who are already behind this initiative. It's got to be a people's initiative, and it's got to treat all people, everybody in Brighton, as citizens, as equal. Right, David, and then we'll have any questions people have got. Oh, well, sorry, John, if you come down here, I'll get you in.
John!
So I'm not the last
Hoping
speaker.
to avoid it.
He said he wanted to avoid it, that's why I didn't call
It
him.
wouldn't be the same without you. Come on,
No, we need John. But I'll just do a little bit first. So do you want to? So this is just tidying up, really. We had a couple of articles unaccounted for, so I'll just quickly mention them. So number 10 is the right to privacy, and so this is in the wider human rights sense of the word. So everyone is entitled to their privacy. You're entitled to privacy even in emergency accommodation, even in the sweat protocol. You're entitled to be treated with dignity and have sufficient space of your own. One way in which this right to privacy is really not being met at the moment is in some of our temporary accommodation in this city, where people are put into rooms and they are not allowed to have visitors. They can't see their partner, their child, their friends. That's not respect for a person's right to privacy. The right to privacy is also your right to dignity, your right to a private space with the people who matter to you. And the other one was the last right in the Bill of Rights, which is the right to life. We added this one, but FEANTSA likes it, and I hope it will go further. We have there's a right to life in the European Convention of Human Rights. So the state is not supposed to kill us, at least not except in certain very special circumstances. But more than that, they have a right to protect us. Where there is a specific, very real risk to our lives, the state has a correlative duty to keep us safe. In this case, if you're on your life expectancy there's various figures around. but 40-something. 40-something. You are likely to die by the time you are 40-something. Put people in even the worst form of emergency accommodation and shelter, and it goes up by 15, 20 years. It's not surprising. This is a very real danger to our lives. This is something the state should do something about. So, for this right to life, we're saying something quite modest, which is, unless you count the people who are homeless, how can you even begin to start thinking about it? In this country, they don't even record the deaths of people who are homeless. So our right number 13 says, record the deaths of people who are homeless, record the deaths of people who are in temporary and emergency accommodation, investigate them, find out why, find out how you can stop it. We think that's an important one. Right, I'm going to leave it to John.
Okay. My name is John Hadman, and I've been campaigning for the homeless. And I had 2 38-degree petitions to the council. The first petition was signed by 4,100 signatures, and then it took me 19 weeks to get the number of signatures, and finally the council, full council, voted 100% and with no abstentions and gave £135,000 for funding a night shelter. This opened in Brighton, the Brighton Centre, as a night shelter from the 10th of November 2017 and closed on the 11th of March 2018, when 19 people were made homeless on a day that rained all day. How humane is this by the council? My second petition to the full council had 5,500 signatures in 6 weeks. It was again passed by full council 100%, no abstentions, and £165 funding for night shelter 365 days a year. The night shelter for this coming winter is going to be open from the middle of November to the middle of March 2019. So this is a very short period, and we should have night shelters open now, especially using empty properties which throughout Brighton and Hove. But there is reluctance by owners of these properties to allow them to be used, although they would get certain tax deductions by allowing them to be used. So I would ask you, when we launch the 38 degrees petition, to take to the council about the matter of the launch today, that you will sign up on the 38 degrees. And we'll use the internet, the magic of the internet, for a good and useful cause. From 79.
It's your passion that keeps you going. Come on.
79 gold. Many thanks.
And I see Maria has to leave, so we say thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you and bye. No, still talking. Doesn't even know I'm talking. Bye. Amazing. Right, are there any questions either to anybody that spoke or particularly to David before we all leave and continue the battle to ensure we have the Bill of Rights in May next year? Right, exactly.
It's less of a question to do specifically with the Bill of Rights, but I had a question to do with local connections. So one thing I understand about the housing register is in order to be put onto that, you need to have a local connection in the community. So I had a question regarding the Gypsy Roma traveller community. Is there some way of ensuring that they're able to be considered to have a local connection, or how? I don't exactly know how a local connection is defined under like the local council authority. So
it varies from borough to borough. It depends on each council. It's the same for the travellers as it is the homeless. So local connections. 6 hours. I think it's 5 years now, is it?
Yes.
It varies from who you ask, to be quite honest. But then saying that, so that's usually you have to get them to accept local connection and duty of care. If they are vulnerable, then you can, under the Homeless Reduction Act and other things, say, well, actually this person is vulnerable because they've been through the care system, or they're due to be homeless, or they're an ethnic minority group. So there are ways of getting around that, and anything that we do is nothing to do with local connection. We don't believe in local connections, because when you're constantly criminalised all the time and moved on, you lose your local connection anywhere anyway. Yeah?
I think the main point is there are, as somebody who does advocacy work as well as working with the coalition, or as part of working with the coalition, one of the biggest problems one faces with local authorities and other statutory bodies is when you approach them with an issue to be tackled, it's not, oh, how do we tackle that issue? How do we work together to overcome that issue? Where are the regulations that provide us with the resources and knowledge to deal with it? It's, oh, why can't we help? It's, oh no, we can't do that. Oh, there's this regulation that lays down this condition. And until you actually check what regulations they're referring to, the context in which those regulations exist, and the way they've been put into practice by various legal bodies in the past, it's only then that you appreciate that they're being interpreted either out of ignorance or in the wrong way by Jobsworths or those that have been advised to hold back the applications, which is why, as part of the legal and advocacy work of the coalition, we're developing the street advocates. Interestingly, Maria was saying before the meeting of how this is also something they're doing in Italy through the street lawyers. So that's part of our work in terms of opening up access and right to information and so on. Sorry, yeah.
Following on precisely from that point about the invention of non-existent laws which criminalise lawful behaviour, the Home Office have had a policy, as we know, of trying to arrest and deport rough sleepers who happen to be EU nationals. Question: has this been happening in Brighton? What action has been taken?
Yeah, I've had 1 or 2 Roma gypsies that have been deported. We've had a couple of people deported back to Portugal. And actually one of the Romanian boys was 19 when he was actually deported from Brighton. And the situation was he was actually robbed whilst he was living on the streets. We went to the Roman embassy to try and get him some support. In the meantime, he engaged with St Mungo's and First Base. And when he came out of antifreeze one day, they were waiting with deportation papers with him. He didn't even go to a detention centre, he just went straight on a plane. He was able to fight that because if you're deported, I think it's 7 to 10 years that you're not actually allowed to come back to the place where they deported you from. He actually managed to fight that, and he's actually back in Brighton, and we're working with him to get to compensation. But it does happen a lot.
And it's something which we're working against, and with the help of the True Law for Life and the legal team that we're working with and building up ourselves.
But it was seen as unjust by the High Courts, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The High Courts paid.
I mean, legally, the courts have ruled against. And that information is available. It's available on the website, on our website, as well as if anybody wants information like that, it will have over the near future a range of information sheets on various areas that Barry, our esteemed fundraiser and communications expert in the corner is dealing with, that most of you met when you came in. So that is an important area of work, and obviously directly relates to what I think is a fantastic new opening of cooperation with FEANTSA on a European-wide Bill of Rights. It applies to us all. Any other questions other than how do we get involved for the next meeting? Yeah.
I manage a small coffee shop in the lanes, an area that's got quite a bit of homelessness on the streets, but also it finds its way into sort of small businesses and sort of doors and stuff. And I often find there's not a lot of guidance for small business owners and managers on how to deal with, especially things like the respect of private property in terms of if something is left, what to do with it and how to manage it, because sometimes things are left and there isn't a lot of support. So is there plans to kind of alongside this try and provide documentation for small business owners to actually work towards or numbers to call or things like that?
There will be now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something I haven't thought about. I don't know about David, unless it was part of his master plan. It probably was. But certainly that's something we should look at. Because we have to bear in mind the interests of everybody involved. And I think that there is a genuine amount of support from many small businesses and many people. There are in Camptown, St James's Street area where I live. But you know, we've got to be able to deal with the real problems that people face. David, you want to?
We would primarily say that that the council must take the lead on these things. So if this is adopted by the council, then the right to respect private property says that people should not have their that should have their belongings respected. They shouldn't ever be damaged or thrown away or removed without compelling need. If they are removed, they should be made available for collection without charge. And it's for the council to ensure that those services are available. And presumably that will be a way of providing a solution for people like you.
Absolutely. And I think also some awareness in terms of begging, for example. You know, businesses. I've seen people just refuse people to enter alleys because they just didn't want them to. You know, and things like that. Perhaps a bit more guidance in terms of having something that you can say that is you cannot stop people from just trying to survive. You know, regardless of whether it's uncomfortable for your guests, doesn't mean that you should have the right to prevent them from trying to survive. I really support things.
You're a nice businessman.
Yeah. There are you. Where's your capital?
We'll be there tomorrow.
Bring your card.
There's no Marlwood coffee shop that's in the lane there.
Where?
Marlwood, there's no Marlwood.
Oh, I love it on there.
Yeah, even more now.
Right. Do you want to say anything?
Is it, just to ask,
Yeah.
is this something we can do to help? I mean, obviously, sign petitions to get the word out, but...
Yes, all this enormous. I won't give you the whole list because we have to take it during 4 o'clock, I think. But certainly we need people to be involved in decision making. We've got a homelessness action group, a legal and advocacy group, as well as communications and so on. And we do need more people to get involved, both in terms of thinking and ideas. For example, you know, that the issue that's just been raised, it's important that we don't do things that have unintentional consequences, which can often happen unless you get the full involvement of all sections of the community. So it's really a matter of ensuring, either through Barry at the back, with all the new rules on sharing of information, emails and so on, is ensure that Barry knows so that you receive the mailings. You'll get mailings on a regular basis on a whole range of issues to do with housing, and sometimes at funny times of the day and night. But you don't have to read them, and it will normally tell you what the mailing is about when you get it. We have, for example, an executive meeting coming up on the 3rd. We extend all our meetings to try to involve people who want to get involved. We don't take decisions behind closed doors. So, for example, we need more people to be able to ask questions at the council. I don't know if you know, but we've been taking about the first 2 hours of housing committee for the last year with questions and deputations and petitions, raising issues that won't know about, and raising issues that hold the council and the city to account. So we need more people to be involved in that sort of thing. I don't know how many people know how to use FOIs. Sorry, shouldn't use all these acronyms because there'll be somebody here who doesn't know what an FOI is, I know. The Freedom of Information requests, which we tend to put quite a few in from the coalition. The more people involved in that, the better. Problem is, it's a matter of knowing how to do it and the most effective way of doing it. So we're running a workshop on the 11th of November. I think it's the 11th, it might be the 10th, it's the Saturday anyway. A practical workshop on the most effective way of putting in FOI requests. And that's going to involve 15 real questions that will then be followed up later when you've got the responses to those questions for information that we actually need, whether it be on council tax or whether it be on certain figures, statistics that were mentioned earlier on in numbers in terms of coroners' inquests are now opened up into the freedom of information legislation and so on. So there's always an enormous amount of work to do.
So is that part, sorry to interrupt, is that also part, going back to the Bill of Rights, is that also kind of like writing down the detail of each
Yes, I mean, what
to
the
make
big,
it practical?
yeah, the big battle will be coming after they've adopted this. And I'm sure, you know, morally, ethically, no council is going to oppose this. They'll support it wholeheartedly. The difficulty then comes into translating these rights into practical actions. Some of the things that have already been mentioned by David and so on. And we'll need people who needed to help do that sort of thing. But also this practical work needed. We're very short of people with cars. In fact, we've got one person involved in the coalition who provides transport for everybody. We need, for example, to be able to perhaps deliver emergency supplies, or we need to be able to get somebody from point A to point B quickly. So it's useful to have somebody to help with that. I can tell you that we are fortunate and we're going to, we weren't going to sort of appeal much for volunteers to do some of the practical things because we are non-funded, totally voluntary, and we haven't had a priority of raising funds, although we've been supported by the Lush Fund for the advocacy training, and the workshops are still open for people there on the Eventbrite. And we received some funding from the Social Impact Fund from Pride. But also within the next 2 or 3 weeks, we will be able to provide volunteers with a day travel card due to the good offers of the bus company. So you're paying for it anyway, whether you use them or not. It's just that we aren't, and we can use it for a good purpose. So it's important, I think, that when you're asking people to help, especially people who are either on low income or benefits, of which most volunteers are, then we want to be able to ensure that we can at least cover travel expenses and things of that nature. I could give you a list of other things. Try to follow, I mean, please sign up so you get our mailings. Please look on the Facebook and the website that's being developed. And really the next big event, other than the individual workshops and so on, one is full already, I think there's two with still places on. You know, we want to see a big turnout in April next year. And if people want to specifically be involved with the Bill of Rights campaign, which is what today was about, even though, sorry, I managed to ramble on a bit about the Housing Coalition generally, that is my one, but in terms of the Bill of Rights specifically, if you want to be involved just in that, then please make sure Barry at the back knows, and we can ensure that you get information on that.
Contact details all on the yellow pages.
And the same applies to any other area. If you don't want to be bothered with certain things, then we can ensure they're specialised. We've got who I call the wizard, Daniel Harris, who's developing how we do all that sort of stuff. Sorry.
If anybody wants to specifically speak at the committee meetings, and I would encourage people to come and take the time to do that, and you're only up there for about 5 minutes, please can you come and give us your email, because it's usually me that sorts out the list for that. But we really need people to start standing up. My own daughter is 14, so I'm sure you got that.
Okay, just tell Barry to tick that for email, we'll contact you for questions. So, yeah.
Can I just make a suggestion? Would anybody mind having their photograph taken with the support of Brighton and the Rights?
Yeah, well, people can join you if they're...
Yeah, if they want to stand on there, so it can go on Facebook and we can spread the word out.
Is anybody who doesn't want their photo taken, then fine.
Can I quickly say something?
Sorry,
I have to say this, yeah, I have to, yeah? I have to. I'm street homeless, my own fault. The first base is accepting, but it's actually open, like doing the night show thing. It's literally letting people in who've only been like 2-3 months. I've been there 3 years and they won't let me stay. Yet when I go there, they give me my sleeping bag and then I piss off and I sleep in the bush. And I'm saying to you, if I leave this building without something, like some sort of help today, I'm going to literally, when I just left here half an hour ago, I went down to see one of my mates. I'm on the spice now, by the way, my own fault. I just literally wanted to kill one of the boys because he wouldn't give me a pull on his joint, being an old woman about it. Point is I'm being left out on the street and I'm getting off key. I'm walking around with a Jason mask. I'm not a danger to anyone. If I wanted to literally kill someone, I would kill myself. But it's getting to the point I want to kill myself all the time. And I ain't getting no help from St Mungo's. So Mungo saw me outside the chemist. She didn't say, Dylan, are you okay? Dylan, I've got to speak to you. Dylan, this is how it is, sweet. I respect you for that. I don't mind sleeping on the streets, but our general principle, as an Englishman, yeah, I've done all my voluntary. I've filled up containers for other countries and I've done loads of shit for people. And I want some help. I need some help. I would help everybody. I got paid a Emmaus not that long ago, and I worked for 3 weeks, slave labour, shite food. It would have been like I would have respected it if it was decent food. The geezer used to serve the food. Here you go, here's your dinner. Miserable face, like the geezer in first base. Give you your dinner with a miserable face, and it puts you in a bad mood for a day. No, it puts me in a bad mood. My point is so I'm just going to get to the point. I'll shut up. Yeah. First base is open tonight. Yeah. So can I, with someone in here, be able to help me get in there tonight? Because I ain't sleeping out on the streets again tonight. I said that's my boots last night. And I get jobbed, I literally end up killing somebody. Literally. Or myself. And I don't mean anyone like normal people, I mean like my sort of spices and crackheads and all that. You see me walking around all the time. I'm completely wasted. I'm running around like a crazy man. And I'm not drunk, I'm on a little bit of my medication. If I was drunk, I wouldn't because there's kids in here. But I contemplate, I don't even want to say it, straight through the window, mate. Straight through that window. That will cause some drama, wouldn't it? I was going to go into probation, go up top of the stairs and jump off the roof, kill myself at probation. Literally go into probation and stab myself to death because they're not helping me. Because I'm not a sex offender, I'm not a PPO, I'm not a mapper. Last year, I got out of prison on Tuesday the 10th of January, the 24th, Friday the 24th of February, Friday the 24th of March, the 19th of May, the 20th of June, the 15th of September, Monday the 6th of November, and Tuesday the 12th of December. 8 times I got out of prison last year, but just going in the shop that you cut it. I ain't a danger to you, or your car, your house, your children, your grannies, none of you. Just the places that sell you alcohol. And you see the people with the off licences, big attitude problems. So I want to quit drinking, but just let me get to the point. Tonight, I want to get into St Mungo's first base, because they've got loads of space. I sleep in a big giant room and you've got to listen to people snoring and farting and all that crap, but Better than being out raining and you've got mosquitoes, well, seagulls and that shit driving you crazy. So it's this, I don't even know what to say, but this, if I don't, do you know what, shut up, dinner, bruv.
Okay, we'll talk. Sorry, Tom. Come up and have a
Yeah,
chat.
sweet.
We'll sort it out. Take the photograph and thank you all for supporting the launch. Hope you found it.
Yeah.